She saw him the moment the diner door chimed. The man she had spent years trying to outrun. He looked wealthier, colder, untouchable, yet his presence ripped open wounds she had stitched shut in silence. He stared through her as if she were a stranger, but his little girl stared into her with a recognition that sent chills through the room. One whispered word from the child cracked the millionaire's flawless mask, and in the bright stillness of that American afternoon, the past she buried clawed its way back to life. The lunch rush at Maple Junction Diner had just begun when the bell above the glass door gave its familiar chime. Nora almost didn't look up. She was focused on balancing the tray tucked against her hip, shifting between tables with the practiced grace of someone who'd survived far worse than spilled coffee. The midday sunlight poured through the windows, warm and undisturbed, until the moment she heard a man's commanding voice, deep enough to cut through the hum of conversation. "Table for two." Nora froze. Her eyes lifted, and the world seemed to tilt. Standing beneath the doorway's glare was a man in a charcoal suit, his presence sharp enough to draw every pair of eyes. He didn't look like he belonged in a roadside diner. He looked like the kind of man who bought buildings, not burgers. But Nora didn't see the wealth first. She saw the ghost. Evan Lorne. She had not spoken his name aloud in 5 years. She had sworn she never would again. His expression was carved from stone, the same jawline, the same calculating eyes, but harder now, like he had spent the years fortifying himself against even the memory of her. He didn't flinch when their eyes met. If anything, he looked through her, as if she were a transparent shape in a room full of solid objects. "Right this way," she forced out, her voice thin but steady. She guided him and the small girl beside him to a booth by the window. The child couldn't have been more than 6, with a soft, round face, brown curls tied into a ponytail, and eyes so deeply expressive. Nora felt them before she understood them. She slid into the booth carefully, scanning the diner like she was searching for something familiar. Or someone. Nora placed menus on the table, retreating with the urgency of someone escaping a fire, but as she turned, that small, steady gaze followed her. Evan's gaze did not. He adjusted his cufflinks and spoke with rehearsed indifference. "We don't have all day." Nora Sepp's fingers trembled only once, behind the safety of her apron, before she returned with her notepad. "What can I get for you?" Evan didn't look up. Black coffee, chicken cob, no croutons, dressing on the side. His tone carried the polished disrespect of a man accustomed to commanding rooms with his impatience. "And for you, sweetheart?" Nora asked gently, turning to the child. Before the girl spoke, her hand shot across the table and gripped Nora's wrist. Small fingers, warm, trembling. Nora gasped inwardly. The girl Sip's voice was small but ringing with clarity. "I know you." The diner fell away. The clatter of dishes softened. Even the sunlight seemed to dim. Evan stiffened, his hand freezing mid-reach as if the child had uttered something forbidden. He finally lifted his eyes to Nora, really lifted them, and the cold in his expression cracked, revealing something sharp beneath fear. Nora swallowed, her throat suddenly too tight. "I am sorry. Have we met before?" But the child shook her head with a strange certainty. "Not here." She shifted closer, her voice trembling with something that wasn't set fear. "I know your face." Evan's voice snapped like a whip. "Lila, enough." His daughter went silent instantly, but her eyes didn't leave Nora. There was sorrow in them. Sorrow and longing. Nora stepped back, her pulse thundering. The past swirled around her like smoke, thick and suffocating. She had rebuilt her life brick by brick, city by city, until she finally landed in this quiet corner of Ohio, where nobody knew her history, her mistakes, or the man she once trusted more than anyone. Evan Lorne was the last person she expected to see in this lifetime, and his daughter recognizing her, Impossible. Utterly impossible. Nora turned away to put in their order, her breath shallow, her palms cold. She leaned against the kitchen doorframe, trying to steady herself. "Hey," the cook, Terry, murmured. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." She forced a smile. Something like that. When she brought their food out, Evan barely acknowledged her, but the girl, Lila, watched every movement with aching intensity. When Nora placed the plate in front of her, Lila's fingers brushed hers deliberately. "I remember your voice," she whispered. Nora's heart collapsed into itself. Evan reacted before she could. He caught his daughter's hand, gripped too firm for a public place. "Lila," he hissed under his breath. Not another word. The child's eyes filled instantly, but she didn't pull away. She simply stared up at him with the quiet betrayal of someone who had learned too many secrets, too young. Nora stepped back, feeling something inside her shift, a quiet click, like a locked door coming undone. As the meal went on, tensions tightened, like invisible strings. Evan answered work calls with clipped frustration, cutting through the diner's calm with his impatience. Lila picked at her food, her gaze drifting repeatedly to Nora, confusion deepening into something like pleading. Nora tried to focus on her other tables, but her mind kept circling the same impossible thought. And then it came. When Nora returned with their check, Lila suddenly slid out of the booth and ran toward her. Evan shot up, but too late. The child wrapped her arms around Nora's waist in a desperate, trembling hug that paralyzed the entire diner. Nora froze, the breath knocked from her. Evan Stye's voice shredded the air. "Lila, let her go." But the girl buried her face into Nora's apron and whispered the word that made the entire world stop spinning. "Mom." The tray slipped from Nora's hand and clattered onto the floor. Evan stood pale, enraged, terrified, all at once. Nora's lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at the child, at the man behind her, at the life she had tried so desperately to bury. The past had found her, and it wasn't said it done yet. For a moment, the diner seemed to fall silent, as if even the air was holding its breath. Nora felt the little girl's arms wrapped tightly around her waist, trembling, desperate. The single word still echoed through the walls of her mind, too sharp to ignore, too impossible to accept. "Mom." Evan reached them in 3 clipped strides. His polished shoes squeaked slightly against the tile floor, a tiny sound swallowed by the tension crackling through the room. "Let her go," he demanded, voice low but fraying at the edges. But the child clung harder. Her face was buried in Nora Sip's apron, and Nora felt tiny breaths shaking against her stomach. She laid a careful hand on the girl Sip's shoulder, her voice barely steady. "Sweetheart, I think you Sep's her confused." "I'm not," Lila whispered, her words trembling but certain. "I know you. I know your face from before." The diner customers traded alarmed looks. Terry peeked from the kitchen window, brows raised, the spatula paused midair. A family at the corner booth stared openly, their fries untouched. The air was thick with curiosity, the kind that left no place to hide. Evan Feck's jaw tightened until the muscles trembled. "Lila, come, here." His daughter lifted her head slowly, eyes glossy with tears, but filled with conviction far beyond her age. "Why didn't Set you tell me?" she asked him. "Why didn't Set you tell me she was real?" A visible shudder rippled down Evan Sip's spine. Nora blinked, her throat constricting. "Evan," she said, the name tasting like dust and memory. "What is she talking about?" But he wouldn't Set meet her eyes. Instead, he knelt beside the booth, his face level with his daughter Sip's. "You Sept are confusing her with someone else," he said, tone deliberate, fabricated, coded in the polished control he Sept used his entire life. "You have an active imagination." "No," Lila interrupted, voice cracking. "I remember her." Evan Tast breath hitched. and Nora saw it. The fear in his eyes, the guilt, the secret he had carried like a sealed vault. The little girl reached into her small pink backpack and pulled out something that made Nora's heart seize. A drawing. A rough crayon-colored sketch of a woman's Sep's face. Familiar, heartbreakingly so. The hair was slightly longer. The eyes a little softer, but the resemblance to Nora was unmistakable. Almost haunting. Beneath the drawing, written in a child Sep's careful scrawl, was a single word. Mama. Nora felt dizzy, the world tilting as half-formed memories she'd tried to bury clawed at the edges of her clarity. But she forced her voice to remain steady. Lila, who gave you this? The girl hesitated, glancing anxiously at her father. I did it, but I didn't make it up. I remember her from before Daddy took me away from the house with the blue porch. Nora's knees nearly buckled. Evan shot up abruptly, anger and panic flickering across his face. That sip's enough, he snapped. These are false memories. Children imagine things. She remembers things you didn't want her to, Nora said quietly, staring at him, her voice trembling with restrained fury. Did something happen? Why is she saying this? Evan's mask cracked, not fully, but enough to show the storm beneath. He turned away, running a hand over his face. You don't understand, he muttered. None of this is true, Nora finished. Or convenient? His eyes flashed. Don't twist this. I not twisting anything, she shot back. But she recognizes me, and not just vaguely. She knows things she shouldn't things a stranger wouldn't invent. Evan took a step toward her, his voice low and sharp. You left, Nora. You walked away. You don't get to question me about anything. Nora Sep's breath faltered. Memories surged. The screaming, the fear, the night she fled with nothing but a torn coat and a battered hope. The night she believed she was losing her sanity. She had never been pregnant. She had never had a child. Had she? Lila Fuss. Small voice broke the storm. I remember the lullaby. Both adults froze. What lullaby? Nora asked, her voice barely audible. The girl hummed, soft, uncertain, but eerily familiar. A melody with notes so deeply woven into Nora's bones she felt them, even if she couldn't place them. It was like hearing an echo of a dream she once lived. Nora Sep's breath grew shallow. Where did you hear that? From you, Lila whispered. When I was little, before Daddy said you couldn't stay. Evan stepped forward. Stop. But Lila stepped in front of him, tiny but fierce. You told me she didn't want me, she cried. You said she left me. The accusation slammed into the room, silencing even the distant hum of the refrigerator. Nora Sep's legs weakened. Evan, what did you tell her? His eyes glistened, a rare, terrifying vulnerability. I was trying to protect her. From what? Nora demanded. He opened his mouth, but the ringing of Nora's phone cut through the moment like a blade. She flinched, instinctively pulling it from her apron pocket. Unknown number. Her hand shook as she swiped to answer. Hello. Her face slowly drained of color. Terry watched from afar, brows knitting. Evan stiffened. Lila wiped her cheeks, confused. Yes, Nora said, voice cracking. This is she. A long pause. Then the voice on the other end spoke again, low and grave. Nora Sperron's free hand grasped the edge of the table to stay upright. Are you sure? She whispered. You are absolutely sure. More silence. More words, and Nora collapsed into the booth behind her, her breath stolen. I need a minute, she whispered, tears threatening but not yet falling. Evan stepped closer, unsettled by the sudden shift. Nora, what happened? Nora looked up at him with hollow, trembling eyes that now held something far heavier than the past. They found something, she whispered. Something about the years I'd done to remember. Evan froze. Lila clutched Nora Sip's hand, and as the diner lights flickered slightly from the afternoon sun shifting behind a cloud, Nora spoke the words that shattered whatever stability remained. They said I wasn't just missing. She swallowed hard. I was reported dead. The world stopped, and none of them were ready for what came next.